Good afternoon, everyone. You can't tell, but I'm smiling. It's great. It is great to see you all here. I took off my PITT mask because this one's a little easier to talk in, but we're here today to continue something that started last year in the midst of the pandemic. So while I'm welcoming you officially to our second University of Pittsburgh Internal Funding Showcase, in many ways it feels like the first since we gather here together in person to celebrate and learn more about the creative, collaborative, and innovative work that all of you are doing and for which you have successfully competed for support. You know, your program lists research awards under various internal funding mechanisms over recent years. It's an important role that universities play in advancing our research and scholarship mission to kind of provide that seed and catalytic funding. And you've heard of programs like our Social Science Research Initiative, our special initiative to promote scholarly activities in the humanities, and various other programs related to research and teaching across the university. What we did is create the PITT Momentum Funds to bring all of these various programs under one umbrella and then to expand them and to increase their collective power for our institution. So the major focus of this effort has been to support new partnerships that span the university and bridge barriers across the disciplines. We think that's one of the most important things that the university can support is creating the connections across our university, tackling bigger challenges, bringing people together. So university level support for innovative and creative collaboration is designed to lower the barriers to getting this kind of research started, to allow faculty the freedom to focus on these projects, and to set research teams up for success, and hopefully, including winning external funding. So the Momentum Funds were structured as a tiered set of awards, and of course you have all been competing, so I'm telling you something you already know, but the three programs, of course, are the seeding grants. This is for innovative scholarship by an individual or small group. Teaming grants, which will surprise you to learn, is designed to support planning and building capacity to embark on larger multidisciplinary projects. And finally, scaling grants, which are large grants of up to $400,000 designed to support research teams in the detailed planning and proof of concept work needed to successfully compete for major external funding. And those of you who have worked on these large projects know there's a different set of skills and activities and organizational things that need to be put in place. And the scaling grants are designed to support your efforts to develop that capacity. This year, we encourage proposals addressing racial inequity, social determinants of health, and inequalities highlighted by the pandemic and related topics. Of course, no surprise, timely issue facing our society, our country, and our own community here directly. And I must say the results have been really inspiring. You can get a sense of that just by looking through your program booklet and seeing the descriptions in the program. And of course, you'll get a chance to learn more and to interact with these teams at today's poster session. So it is my privilege today to recognize the two research teams who have each been awarded the scaling grant. And at this time, I'd like to start with Elizabeth Miller, professor of pediatrics in the School of Medicine, to join me. I get to say some nice things about you, Liz, while you stand next to me, and then we'll take a quick picture. Liz, as many of you know, is a lead investigator for this project, which is called Promoting Trustworthiness of the SARS Coronavirus 2 Vaccine among Black and Latinx communities. Her team is motivated by the fact that people who identify as Black or Latinx have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic, both economically and in their physical health. So the members of the team span the university and our local communities, and their goal is to identify strategies to promote vaccine trustworthiness by shifting away from the traditional focus of educating communities, and instead addressing the mistrust itself by listening and learning from our community partners. This is about how research institutions and health professionals can increase their trustworthiness and achieve these health outcomes. So please join me in congratulating Dr. Elizabeth Miller and her team. Please imagine my big smile. You know, when they find these pictures in the time capsule, we're going to have a lot to say about this moment in time, right? Our grandkids are going to be like, you did what? It is my great pleasure now to recognize Assistant Professor of Education, Esohe Osai, to join me as well. I will also say some nice things as you stand alongside me. This second scaling award goes to a team led by Osai. She is the lead investigator for this project, and it's called Improving Educational Opportunities for Black Youth in Pittsburgh, a justice-centered intervention. This team is motivated by the fact that Black youth are often excluded from opportunities to earn a college degrees compared to white students, and that college attendance and completion provides substantial tangible and intangible benefits. So their Justice Scholars Institute project will strive to create conditions in which Black youth can thrive as global citizens. The team and youth participants will achieve this by understanding factors that impact Black students' access to college, examining the mechanisms that influence student success, engaging in justice-centered partnerships for post-secondary access, and developing a supportive, justice-centered teacher-leader collective. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Esohe Osai for this achievement. Thank you. I know in discussions with our mayoral candidate, Mr. Gainey, that he's going to be very interested in the outcome of this work. So I wish you and the team all success, both of you, as you're dealing with the issues that are really on the platform of our society today and our local community as well. This really speaks to, what a university is here for. We're here to expand knowledge, to share it, educate folks, but fundamentally the reason we do that is to make this a better place for everyone. And I want to congratulate everyone in this room who earned momentum funds and for everyone who is sharing in their research today. The work that you were doing is what makes our campus special. This is why we're here as a university. And it's the research that you're doing that is negotiating the present, creating a just and vibrant future in our communities, and scaling up what we're doing so that it has the scale to achieve a worldwide positive impact. And on that note, I'd like to hand things off to our Provost, Ann Cudd, and our Senior Vice Chancellor for Research, Rob Rutenbar, as they launch a panel discussion entitled The Pursuit of Team Research. Their goal is to spotlight the support available to Pitt faculty to develop your ideas, attract the collaborators you need for success, to gather the resources that you need to mobilize, and finally, how to translate that knowledge into real-world change. So thank you, and thanks to our panelists. And Ann, I'll turn it over to you and Rob. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Pat. So thank you all for being here today. I think it's kind of takes a little courage to gather together for these first few times, but I'm so delighted to see you all, and I know that this will become more of a habit for us, and I look forward to the year ahead. First, I want to thank my Senior Vice Chancellor colleague, Rob Rutenbar, for really envisioning these momentum grants and working with his great team to do that, and our great team, Julia Spears and others in the room, for working so hard to make sure that these grants are awarded and tracked and assessed, and it's great work, so thank you very much. We're in for a treat today. We're going to hear from two great scientists and scholars who are using the grants that we make available to think even bigger and to do even bigger things. And they've really done amazing things to go from their personal research projects to really groundbreaking, very large team projects that involve multiple institutions and can really have a lot of impact in the world. So we're here with Kevin Binning and Corey Richards Zawacki, and we're delighted to have them here. So I'm going to start by introducing Kevin. Kevin Binning is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology and a research scientist in the Learning Research and Development Center. He leads a 2020 Teaming Award, co-leads a 2021 PITT Seed project, and participated in the 2021 cohort of Big Proposal Boot Camp. His team has already leveraged their Teaming Award into 2 federal awards. Kevin is the PI on a $2 million project from the Institute for Education Sciences to expand and scale up the team's ecological belonging intervention across large lecture courses at Pitt. His Teaming Award co-investigator, Linda D'Angelo, who also participated in the 2021 Big Proposal Boot Camp, is PI on an aligned $2.4 million NSF award to apply the intervention at Purdue and UC Irvine engineering schools. So now, Kevin, would you please say a few words about your ecological belonging intervention?
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is an intervention that we developed here at Pitt. And the idea behind the intervention, it's a brief classroom activity, typically delivered during the first week, sometimes second week of classes. In students' recitation sections, we target large lecture courses, big, often first-year level courses. We've targeted primarily Foundations of Biology, Bioscience 150, which is a very large lecture first-year bio course, and Physics 174, which is a calculus-based physics course primarily taken by first-year engineering majors. What the intervention does is basically it tries to change the way students make sense of adversity. We know that coming to college, especially as a first-year student, is a very turbulent time. Not only are you an upheaval of your social networks, but also new academic demands, some of which are stronger demands than students are used to. So what the intervention does is it tries to dispel the idea that my struggles are about me. Okay, so this isn't something that's indicative or diagnostic of your ability. The fact that you're struggling is actually very normal. And so what the intervention does is it tries to teach students to adopt a mindset that struggling in this class and during the transition more generally is both normal and surmountable. It's temporary and something that you, with time and with perseverance and effort, can get through. What the bigger picture here is that although all students face some level of adversity, this is not evenly distributed across student groups. Students from historically underrepresented backgrounds, for example, contend with these doubts about belonging, things you might hear very similar to something like imposter syndrome, deal with these things to a greater extent, and they have a larger impact on their long-term outcomes, both short and long-term outcomes. So the goal of this intervention is not only to help all students, but to help students in particular who come from backgrounds within that context that are particularly at risk for doubts about belonging, for feeling like they might be an imposter in an admissions error. So what we showed, and what was so exciting to the granting agencies and to folks here at Pitt, is that we actually closed performance gaps in introductory physics between men and women, and in biology between white and non-white students. So we did this experimentally. We had a control group, random assignment at the classroom level, and are now continuing to scale this up. As Anne mentioned, we're now looking to expand to other universities and other classrooms and other departments here at Pitt as well.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
Cool. Thank you. Well, first, let me just return the thanks and gratitude to Anne and the Provost shop. Putting the Momentum Funds program together has been one of the most fun and satisfying things that I've gotten to do in my current job. And honestly, reading the proposals and doing the reviews of the finalists is literally one of the highlights of my academic year. So thank you to everybody who participates in this program and makes this thing successful. I'd also like to do some quick shout outs to the people on my team who made this one work. Mike Holland and Ryan Champagne, who both helped create the program and operationalize it and actually make it run so seamlessly. So let me introduce Corey Richard Zwacky, who is a professor in the Department of Biological Sciences and the director of the Pymatuning Laboratory of Ecology. She participated in the 2020 Big Proposal Boot Camp, and she actually won her cohort's Pitch Day competition prize and won support from a precursor of the Momentum Funds, the Central Research Development Fund that was sort of absorbed into the Momentum ramp. Corey then led a team of researchers from Pitt and 6 other universities that won a 5-year, $12.5 million NSF Biology Integration Institute earlier this year. Pitt Research provided support, including proposal development coaching, red team reviews, reverse site visit coaching for Corey's 2020 proposal, and then her 2021 revision and resubmission, which was successful. So Corey, can you give us a little overview of the work that the Biology Integration Institute will support?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the Biology Integration Institute is a new initiative from NSF, and the goal of it is to get biologists to talk among subdisciplines and to really integrate biology all the way from the subcellular level all the way to ecosystems and so to do that, they wanted us to bring together big teams of researchers that can collaborate on answering big questions in biology. And so the big question that our institute is aiming to answer is, how can living systems achieve resilience to global change, and specifically in our case, to emerging infectious disease as one element of global change. And so this part may come as a surprise, but amphibians are actually a really good study system for understanding how living systems become resilient to emerging infectious disease, because amphibians have been out there battling against an emerging pathogen for the past few decades, which is a fungus that's been causing declines and extinctions. And recently we've found that the amphibians are becoming resilient. And so now we have many different replicated sort of natural experiments that we can learn from to understand how living systems achieve resilience and the mechanisms behind that. The other aspect of the Biology Integration Institute is that in addition to research that spans all of the disciplines in biology, we're doing training and outreach to train the next generation of biologists to talk and think across these subdisciplines and really be trained in integrative biology. And so some of the things our institute will be working on is developing course-based undergraduate research experiences that sort of tie in our research on amphibians to learn things about the good stuff that's in the mucus on the skin of amphibians that helps defend themselves against these pathogens, and also to feed back to our research on the fungal pathogen. We also have a bunch of different outreach things at the K-12 level and even lower than that that are all sort of tying into some of the amazing expertise that our department, Biological Sciences, has in outreach and also in real immersive research experiences in the classroom.
Cool, thank you so much.
So I'd like to turn to ask you about how these grants and opportunities, proposal boot camp and all of those kinds of things have helped you. So Kevin, if I could start with you on the Momentum grant, the teaming grant. Did that provide opportunities and resources that you were not able to find otherwise? And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece for me was the kind of the requirement to form a larger team than what I had previously. So I had started this work a few years earlier. I proposed a career award, didn't get it. I proposed another NSF award, didn't get it. And saw this call. I was also coming up for tenure, so I was really anxious, and saw this Momentum Award, and it required me to kind of look beyond my friends who I was applying for grants with. So we reached out. We got collaborators from the Teaching Center, Lorna Kearns and Cynthia Golden, and folks from Learning Sciences, Chris Shun, School of Education, Linda D'Angelo, and Department of Biology, Erica McGreevy. So we had a very much more interdisciplinary team than we had before. And the grant, what it really gave us was money to fund a graduate student to kind of herd the cats, if you will, to get this diverse group of researchers together and to be kind of the memory for the group and for the prodding for the group as well, kind of keeping us on target, keeping our agenda, and providing the student a great learning experience in the process as well. And so the combination of these was really, I think, what made the difference. I went from basically going 0 for 3 to going 2 for 2 on the next 2 subsequent grants. And I think just the feedback from the reviews, it really went over well. We sort of checked all the boxes. We were multi-methodology. We had qualitative and quantitative work because of this, and just a whole bunch of expertise on teaching. And as you know from my description, having expertise from the teaching center was invaluable and really gave us credibility, more credibility than we'd had before. So I think for me, that was the big thing, was to have this student who was kind of accountable to this group, and then this group kind of ended up working together really well.
Okay, great. So you have also received a PITT Seed grant in addition, and I wonder if you could talk about how you see those, the PITT Seed grants, I should say, while the Momentum grants are purely for research, there's a much broader set of activities that the Seed grants also support. And so I wonder if you can say something about how you see these different programs meeting different needs that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So one way to distinguish them is to think about the deliverables that were associated with each of these. So the Momentum grant, the one I was just describing, the deliverable is a grant application. So at the end of the year, you should have at least one grant application, and that's part of the application proposal. Okay, so it's very explicitly about going for the money. The seed was more about developing what we use the seed for, was more about for a tool for evaluating instructors. So we all know the OMETs, but we can do a lot better than OMETs with all the data that are now available, all the computing power that we now have available. And what we were really interested in was trying to gauge things like instructors who teach very large lecture courses repeatedly. There's a lot of them on campus. Can we figure out metrics for things around like who's really promoting equity really well in their classrooms? And then what we hope is to be able to bring instructors in, and if they're interested, to be able to share this information with them and hopefully used as a tool to help improve their teaching. So we'll actually use this tool, this seed tool that we developed as part of our other grant as well, to help us evaluate this intervention and to see, do instructors promote more equity if they've ran this intervention over time, for example. So yeah, in a nutshell, I would say one is the product is the grant itself, and the other is much broader. I think it could be a grant, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and was more of like something that we'll use in our research, a tool and that'll help us be even more competitive for funding in the future.
Mm-hmm. So the Momentum Fund, though, the teaming grant, while the grant application's the deliverable, the teaming is what really facilitated these broad, different methodologies that you were able to bring together.
Exactly.
By bringing people from different disciplines.
Yeah, in fact, the Teaching Center is part of the SEED grant, and that spilled over from the Momentum grant as well. So these things kind of snowballed and fit together really well.
Wonderful.
Okay. Corey, can you talk a little bit about your team? I think just it's a very different, kind of interestingly international sort of a team.
Yeah, so we are a big team. In the final iteration of this institute so far, we have actually 9 different institutions and 12 PIs. So here at Pitt, we have myself and Dr. Justin Kitsis from my department in on the project, but we have collaborations with institutions from all over the US, and some of us are doing research that is happening internationally as well. So we have projects happening in Panama, in Brazil, out in the Sierra Nevadas in California, and here at the Climate Tuning Lab in Pittsburgh. And our collaborating institutions really do sort of range all over the United States. And the cool part about our team is that some of us had worked together before. Some of us worked together on a Department of Defense project for the 5 years previous to winning this award. And others of us are products of that initial group, and others of us are just, coming and bringing new expertise to the team. So putting together the team was one of the really fun parts because, by the stage of the career that I'm in as a full professor, I know who I want to work with, and everyone was, on board about putting together this project and really, really into the idea. So we're really excited about what we can do as a big group going forward.
Okay, thanks. You are both graduates of Big Proposal Boot Camp, right, which I will just mention for the audience is a training group, a training camp that we run every spring semester. We ask deans to nominate faculty into it, and Big Proposal Boot Camp is about writing proposals much bigger than anything you've done before. And the tagline on this is, imagine the biggest proposal you've ever written, add a 0. What happens? What happens turns out to be complexity, but a predictable range of complexities, which actually have solutions. And not only do they have solutions, they have partners on campus who would love to work with you on that stuff. And that's basically what we did. So the question for you both is, so what did you know after Big Proposal Boot Camp that you didn't know when you go in, and was any of it useful?
Yeah, good. I'll go first. I think the biggest thing for me was just open my eyes to this, how big is, right? And also just what big looks like across other other disciplines. So we get exposure. I'm a psychologist, I'm a social psychologist, so my big proposal would be psychologically oriented. But of course, there's a whole plethora, the whole university is kind of in the running for these things. But the diversity of the infrastructure, just the different ways, everything's kind of different, but also sort of the same in a way. You put it better than I did, but sort of lifting the cap off my mindset of what's possible, I think was probably the biggest take home for me.
Okay, thanks. Corey.
Yeah, I guess one of the useful things for me in going to the boot camp was realizing that I wasn't alone in being uncomfortable and thinking about writing these big proposals. It felt very daunting to me when I saw the NSF call come out and thought, okay, we have an idea that could work for this, but how can I possibly be the person to lead one of these things? And so sort of being in the room and hearing that a lot of people felt similar, but a lot of people were willing to learn about it at the same time as I was it felt good. It was probably my belonging moment. But also, one of the really useful things about Big Proposal Bootcamp was learning about all the different elements of big proposals that differ from a sort of normal sized, at least science proposal. So you get a lot less space to talk about the details of your science and a lot more space to talk about things that seem daunting, like how to put together a project management plan, how to put together a team structure, how to make your team accountable for keeping track of milestones and selling those things that make it sound like you know what you're doing when you really haven't done it before. It was a real big part of the learning process for me.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Well, I want to follow up on the Big Proposal boot camp because I think another element, I think probably all of us have had the experience of being turned down for some proposal or some article or something like that. And you mentioned that, I'm guessing that you've had that experience. I'm not positive, Corey, but as a full professor probably. So, but what I think I've heard from you in talking to you both about your experiences is that there was particularly great coaching involved that helped you to see how, well, first of all, critiqued your proposals or pitches. Could you talk a little bit about that, how this helped you to get beyond the no and to the yes?
Yeah, I think one analogy might be useful is when you do your own taxes versus when you hire a CPA. So you can do your own taxes, you can do it okay, right? But you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what they know. And having that expertise is just, it's invaluable because you don't even realize how invaluable it is until it's in your face and you're, oh, this is how you do this thing. This is grantsmanship or grantspersonship is, especially as a junior faculty member, something I didn't have a lot of training in. And so getting this explicit training and just kind of opening my eyes to how big things can be. Also, just in my own discipline, what would I apply for? You know, this idea too sort of changes my mindset. Okay, well, who's doing work where that might kind of connect? And so it also sort of changes the way you see the field. And I think that then positions you better for applying for grants from peers who are in your field, who will be evaluating it.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely have had proposals that weren't funded before. In fact, this institute was funded on the second try, not on the first try. And I guess when we get feedback, you know, after our proposals are not funded, a lot of times, if in science anyway, we know the things that we have to do to fix it, right? But the feedback that we got from this one was all of the things that I felt a little bit self-conscious about the first time around, like how to really address the question of how is your institute going to become more than the sum of its parts? Questions like this that are really hard to describe and be convincing about were the pieces that I knew were going to be the ones that would get us over the line for funding, and the ones that I felt the least comfortable about how to address. And so working with the Vice Chancellor's office and his team to really get us to think about how to address these things and really, really nail those things that were going to be important to show NSF why they couldn't afford not to fund us was the thing I think that was the most valuable to me. And we had some great coaching to help us through that part.
You know, there's a reason we call these things murder boards.
Right. I wonder if I could turn a little bit to how your work has also impacted the educational experience of our students. So, and your work is so directly about that, and you've talked about that a bit, Kevin. So, Corey, I want to invite you to talk a little bit about this. I know that your colleagues in the biological sciences have been very active in the Innovation in Education program. They've had awards to develop inquiry-based learning models, pre-assessment tools, virtual reality learning tools, and flipped classrooms. It's a great list of innovations. Can you talk about how some of those innovations have percolated through your department's whole approach to learning?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I should say that the institute that I'm a part of can't take any of the credit for what you just mentioned yet. We literally started our institute yesterday, so we're excited to become a part of that, but we haven't done it yet. But yeah, in biological sciences, we are super lucky to have a really large and diverse number of faculty who really care about pedagogical techniques and applying best practices for teaching and learning and really just thinking about how to shake up the whole undergraduate experience. And so, for example, in our intro biology series, the Foundations of Biology series, they've taken all of the lab sections, which is, I think, hundreds of sections, and made them into these authentic research experiences. And so they're taking the research that's going on in our department and they're bringing it into the classroom and having the students to take on real research, contributing new data that then can go back to these labs. And so our institute had this, you know, foundation from Foundations of Biology to plug into. So we had something that we could easily, you know, propose that we can just be a part of this new thing to NSF, and we can already show that it works for getting students interested in science in their first year and for retention in STEM, which is a really important thing for NSF to see. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the innovation that my department has shown in education is something that benefits all of us who are proposing anything having to do with undergraduate education, I think.
And it really shows what we can do at a research university by integrating our research and having that mindset right into the very beginning levels of our students' experience. So thank you. That's a great example.
This is a question to you both. Between the pair of you, you have actually taken advantage of many, maybe most of the programs that the pair of us offer. The CRDF stuff, which was sort of existed, and got rolled into the momentum funds, the momentum ramp, big proposal boot camp, the seed funds, which are a sort of more broad, kind of endeavor, not just research focused. So you're a great, if small, cohort to ask this question of, are there any gaps? I mean, now that you've sort of manifested at the next level up, right, in big proposals, like, what other things might we be doing, or more of, or differently, or I mean, we're always looking for what the next helpful thing, service is that we can offer to make our faculty more productive and more successful. So, any thoughts?
I'd be happy to start with this one. I guess, having just said that our institute just started, and I should say that your office has been super helpful with all the questions that I have sent. But having something to help new teams who have new funding get started and figure out the questions like, how do I publicize this new thing? How do I make sure that people know about it? How do I hire someone in a type of position that I've never had before, like a project manager or a data scientist for our team? Like, how do I advertise? Where do I look? These sorts of questions, which I've been sort of sending your office one-off, but it could be useful to have.
So all of those emails you sent us in one checklist.
Keep those.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Kevin.
I think one piece may be, I'm just thinking about the big proposal boot camp. And something I said earlier was that as a junior faculty member, that was so eye-opening to me. It just makes me think that I could have learned some of that earlier. And so perhaps, moderate-sized boot camp, moderate-sized grant boot camp, or even smaller-sized boot camp. And I think there actually are some of these around campus already. I just hadn't taken advantage of them. And so thinking about supporting, first, second year faculty. Again, I'm really big about transitions and, undergrad transition to graduate school, transition to a new faculty member, and kind of supporting new faculty and kind of training the right mindset for faculty to apply for these grants, knowing you're going to get beat down, knowing that you could get really,
Okay.
So
maybe
we
there's
need a belongingness intervention for new faculty as well. Well, that's actually kind of a duh point.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. So
I
maybe
think
there's
that's great. Maybe that's your next opportunity for impact. Maybe there's a seed grant in the future for that. But I think you're kind of busy with the $4.4 million grants right now.
Yeah, I mean, between the pair of them, they're pushing 20 million, right? So, yeah. So maybe something more like a broader first proposal boot camp.
Yeah.
There are several of those, but there's not one at the institutional level. Right? So, yeah, that's an interesting thought. Are there other? I mean, you sort of answered one of the questions I was about to ask, but I'll ask it even more broadly. Other unexpected difficulties when you started, right? Like after you got, I could literally list all of the really helpful emails that Corey asked about, like how do I publicize this, and how do I hire one of these, and what does this thing cost, and that. But I mean, let me ask Kevin the same thing. It's like, you wake up, it's like you said you were 0 for 3. And then suddenly, like, there's a $5 million check that shows up in the mail. Discuss.
We had a party, a pandemic party.
Okay. Okay.
No, I mean, one of the biggest challenges actually was the pandemic over the and trying to do this collaborative work. Hopefully, this isn't going to be our new normal, but at least in the short term, it was we did these applications almost exclusively over Zoom. In the Momentum, this is maybe another plug for the Momentum funds. They were very flexible. So we used the bulk of the money to support a graduate student, but we had put the rest of the money to travel. We were going to go to Indiana. We were going to go to California. No, we didn't go anywhere. We barely left our house, right? So what we did is we basically repurposed that money and did another proposal. So we ended up, instead of doing one proposal, we ended up doing 2 proposals, and that was actually directly related to the pandemic because we needed to do something over summer. And so we shifted gears, and the Momentum folks were very supportive of this and ended up applying for a proposal last summer where we would have been doing the traveling. So that was like kind of a real pandemic or related one, but
Okay.
yeah.
I think we try very hard in the Momentum funds not to put too many straitjackets on what people can do. The assumption is you know what you're doing, go do it. Ask for help if you need some. So I'm super glad to hear that we basically supported you to do one and you got a twofer. That's just completely awesome. So nicely done.
Right, nicely played. Yeah, so I think at this point, I'd kind of like to see if there are questions from
Yep.
the audience or comments that anybody would like to make. Here you have these two very experienced, awesome team building faculty members, and what questions do you all have?
All right. I'm curious how we build these teams remotely, and with the smaller grants, you're not bringing money to the state, right? It becomes more about working together because you love the idea, I guess. So I'm just curious how you build that team in, if since you can visit, each other's sites, and what consciously do you do, I guess?
With the Momentum, it's a relatively small commitment that you're asking for, right? So a $2 million grant, this is late nights applying for a major grant. The application process is relatively painless. And so convincing folks to get on board with you now, and kind of see how it goes, and if you get the award, you can build momentum. But that certainly helped as well. It was kind of a relatively easy ask for folks, even remotely, even folks who didn't know that well, because you're not signing up for the next 5 years of your life. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Did you want my answer as well? Sure. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, for me, most of my team is actually external to Pitt, and the way we built our team was sort of by going from a lot of individual small grants to kind of I guess it was a biggish grant, like a $5 million size grant to this big grant. And so as we did this, we sort of formed a smaller team that then became a bigger team. And where I learned that I liked to work with and collaborate with most of these people was seeing them at meetings and conferences that I went to, and just getting to know them a little bit at those things, which is a little harder during a pandemic, but conferences still go on Zoom, and presume you can still find team members that way.
I think question from the Chancellor.
You talked about it being bigger, right, adding the zero. One of the things I'm curious about, aside from doing more or more complexity, at some point did bigger change the way you were looking at the whole problem? I'm kind of interested in that moment of transformation, because sometimes bigger is different. And I'm just curious whether that happened to you.
I mean, part of it is when you have such a big, let's say 3 collaborators, right? Now it's no longer just my niche idea, but also their idea, and so you kind of have to find this kind of common ground, right? This kind of area where the 3 of you, let's say in this case, or 10, and it gets bigger than 10 even, and so that helps me to kind of orient where I am. How are we similar and how are we different? And that means this is what I'm kind of unique with, and here's what you're kind of unique with. But to make the team successful was really the commonality that really kind of came through. So I think that piece of somebody's doing kind of related work. It's not exactly the same thing, but it kind of is the same thing. And how can we think about this and kind of join forces to make a new thing? So I think it did change it in that way. Kind of it brought it up to a maybe more abstract level of what I was doing really concretely.
Yeah, in my case, the question that we're trying to answer about how living systems become resilient these anthropogenic factors, including disease, is something that I think you really can't answer with a small grant. You really can't answer with each individual person being funded to do a piece of the puzzle. And so we really didn't have another way to get these comparisons among systems that are responding to the same stressor, but potentially in different ways. We didn't have a way to do that without this scale of funding. So for me, it was a question that couldn't be answered without this size of a project.
Thanks, Pat. Great closing question. Thanks, team, for a great panel session.
Well, I think we should mention that the 2021-22 cycle of PITT Momentum Funds is now open. I'm sure that Mike wanted me to make that announcement. You can find information and application materials on the internal funding page of the Office of Sponsored Programs website. Look under the Find Funding tab. So we look forward to a lot of great projects that we can talk about and showcase next year as well. Thanks again for being on our panel today,
Thanks for
Kevin
having
and
me.
Corey. So
Yeah,
let's
thanks,
give them
everyone.
a